Excuse me, this bread has mold on it. Could I get the same meal as everyone else?
Sandra Keene looked at him, slow, head to toe, and smirked.
Mold? You should feel right at home. After all, roaches don't complain about what they eat.
I'd like to speak with the captain.
The captain? He doesn't serve filthy strays.
Last one, Mr. Pratt. Just for you.
Same cabin, different treatment. He didn't argue. 3 photos, time-stamped, 36,000 feet. What happened before landing ended her career forever. Let me take you back. 3 hours before the mold, before the photos, before Sandra Keene's 18-year career came apart at 36,000 feet. Byron Mitchell woke at 5 a.m. in a hotel suite in Buckhead, Atlanta. The room was still dark. The AC hummed its flat, constant note. On the nightstand, a phone, a watch, and a conference lanyard that read, Byron Mitchell, Closing Keynote, Defense Industry Summit. He'd spent 2 days in rooms full of Pentagon officials, defense contractors, and NATO procurement officers. He gave the closing address. Innovation in next-gen aerospace manufacturing, to 300 people who made decisions worth billions. Standing ovation. 2 generals shook his hand. A NATO liaison asked for a follow-up meeting in Brussels. But that was yesterday. This morning, Byron was just a man catching a flight home. He packed his own bag, black t-shirt, jeans, white sneakers. His watch, a Lange & Söhne worth $45,000, sat on his wrist looking like nothing special. That was by design. Byron spent 20 years in the Air Force. He didn't do flashy. He didn't do loud. He did precise. He flew commercial by choice. Mitchell Aerospace Industries, his company, built components for the very planes he rode in. Navigation systems, cockpit interfaces, emergency lighting. He liked sitting in the cabin, feeling the engines, listening to the hum. It kept him connected to the product. It kept him honest. This morning, Crestline Airways Flight 320, Atlanta to Los Angeles, first class, seat 2A, window. The aircraft was an MA-9 widebody, Crestline's flagship for long-haul domestic routes. Byron knew it well. His company's navigation system ran the flight path. His cockpit interface displayed the data. His emergency lighting lined the aisles. His name was on the maintenance manual stored 200 feet ahead of him in the cockpit. He never mentioned this. He never did. He took a hotel shuttle to Hartsfield-Jackson. The shuttle smelled like vinyl and stale air freshener. He checked his phone. Emails from 2 board members, a contract update from the Pentagon, and a message from his assistant confirming Monday's schedule. He closed them all. Today was just a flight home. Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, the busiest airport in the world. Concrete and glass and endless corridors. The smell of Chick-fil-A and jet fuel. CNN on every screen. Rolling luggage creating a low, constant thunder across the tile. Byron boarded with Group 1. Walked down the jet bridge carrying a leather duffel and a paperback novel. No briefcase, no laptop bag, no suit. He reached seat 2A, stowed his bag, and opened his book. The first-class cabin held 12 seats, leather, wide. The air smelled like fresh linen and coffee. Soft lighting. The quiet hum of money and expectation. Sandra Keene stood at the front of the cabin doing pre-flight checks. Senior flight attendant, 18 years, mid-40s, blonde hair pinned tight, pressed uniform. She moved through first class the way a hotel manager moves through a lobby, assessing, categorizing, deciding who deserved what before they even spoke. She saw Byron. The scan took 2 seconds. Black, t-shirt, jeans, sneakers. No suit, no briefcase. No laptop open to a Bloomberg terminal. Her lip tightened. Barely, but enough. She began her pre-departure greetings. White passenger in 1A. Good morning, sir. Welcome aboard. Champagne, sparkling water, or fresh juice? Big smile, eye contact, warmth. She moved to 1C, Owen Pratt. White, mid-50s, tailored suit, investment banker. Welcome back, Mr. Pratt. Your usual Merlot? She skipped 2A, moved to 2C. White woman in a cashmere blazer. Welcome aboard, ma'am. Can I get you anything before we push back? Every white passenger greeted. Everyone offered a drink. Byron sat in 2A with his book open. Ungreeted, unacknowledged. A man who built the plane's brain sitting in its body. Invisible. What Byron didn't know yet, Sandra had already prepared for him. During pre-flight galley setup, she'd checked the manifest. One passenger in first class with no frequent flyer status, no corporate account, no loyalty tier. Seat 2A. She checked the gate camera and saw him. Black, t-shirt, jeans. She made her decision before he boarded. She walked to the galley, opened the expired stock bin, food tagged for disposal. Bread already spotting with mold. Chicken 2 days past date. She pulled the tray, plated it, placed it in the cart behind 11 filet mignon plates. Position marked Seat 2A, 8:42 a.m., 45 minutes before boarding. The galley security camera recorded every second. Behind the first-class curtain, in Economy Plus Seat 3A, a woman adjusted her reading glasses and peered through the gap. Loretta Sims, 62, retired schoolteacher, 38 years in Atlanta public schools. She noticed Byron. She noticed Sandra skipping him. She noticed everything. Teachers always do. The seatbelt sign turned off with a soft chime. The cabin settled into the low hum of cruise altitude. Engines vibrating through the floor, recycled air pushing through overhead vents, the faint smell of coffee drifting from the galley. Byron pressed the call button. He'd been seated for 20 minutes. No greeting, no drink, no acknowledgement that he existed. Every other first-class passenger had been served before the wheels left the ground. Sandra took her time. She appeared at his row 40 seconds later, not rushing, not concerned. The face she wore was the one she saved for inconveniences. Yes? Could I get some water, please? Sandra tilted her head. We'll be doing a full service shortly. You can wait. She turned to leave. At that exact moment, the white passenger in 2C, across the aisle, pressed his call button. Sandra pivoted instantly. Her entire body language changed. Spine straight, smile wide, voice like warm butter. Of course, sir. What can I get you? Water? Juice? I think we still have some warm nuts from the morning prep. Let me check for you. Byron watched this. The contrast didn't need narration. It spoke for itself. 2 call buttons, 2 passengers. 2 completely different human beings standing behind the same uniform. He closed his book, opened his phone, started typing notes. Time, 10:18 a.m. Details. Call button pressed, told to wait. White passenger 2C pressed button simultaneously, served immediately with full warmth. He didn't know yet how important these notes would become, but something in his gut, the same instinct that kept him alive flying missions over hostile territory, told him to start writing. Beverage service began 20 minutes later. Sandra worked the cabin the way she always did. 2 faces, 1 uniform. White passengers got the full performance. Eye contact, first names, conversation, warmth. More champagne, Mrs. Dalton? How's the book, Mr. Pratt? Can I top you off? She reached Byron. 1 word. No eye contact. Drink? Ginger ale, please. She poured it behind the cart, brought it on a small tray, set the tray on his table, and tilted it. The entire glass of ginger ale slid off the tray and poured across Byron's tray table, his jeans, and his paperback novel. Ice cubes tumbled into his lap. The soda soaked through the pages. 3 weeks of reading, gone. The book swelled and warped in his hands. Ink bled across the cover. Sandra looked at the mess. She didn't reach for a napkin, didn't signal for cleanup, didn't apologize. Oops. One word. Then she walked away. Back to the galley, back to the cart, back to the white passenger in 3C who got his refill of Merlot with a wink. Jill Harmon, junior attendant, late 20s, saw it happen from the galley doorway. She grabbed a stack of napkins and hurried to Byron's seat. "I'm so sorry about that, sir." She whispered it. She meant it. Her hands were shaking slightly as she helped him blot the ginger ale from his jeans. But she didn't report it. She didn't say Sandra's name. She went back to the galley, set down the wet napkins, and said nothing to anyone. Byron dried his jeans. He picked up his novel, pages warped, cover stained, ink smeared beyond recovery. A book he'd been reading for 3 weeks. He set it on the tray table. Ruined. He added to his notes, 10:42 a.m. Beverage spilled on me by Senior F.A. No apology. No cleanup offered. Junior F.A. brought napkins independently. Book destroyed. 90 minutes into the flight. Meal service. Sandra and Jill rolled the galley cart through first class. The ritual began. Silver lids, white linen, the smell of seared beef filling the cabin like a warm cloud. Every white passenger received the same plate. Filet mignon, medium rare, pink center, crisp sear. Roasted vegetables, a warm bread roll, butter in a small ceramic dish, salad with vinaigrette. Hot, fresh, beautifully plated on white china with silver service. Sandra delivered each one with a smile, a comment, a personal touch. "Here you are, Mrs. Dalton. The filet is exceptional today." "Mr. Pratt, I had them hold the mushrooms. I remembered from last time." She reached row 2. She set a tray in front of Byron, lifted the silver lid. Her smile was small, tight, and deliberate. "Bon appetit." What was underneath did not belong on an airplane. It did not belong on a table. It barely belonged in a garbage can. Bread with 3 distinct patches of green-black mold. Fuzzy, spreading, unmistakable. Salad with brown wilted edges and a yellowish film that glistened under the cabin light. Chicken that was pale, gray, and wrong. The color of something that had given up being food days ago. The smell rose immediately. Sour, sharp, the unmistakable scent of spoiled poultry that hits the back of your throat and stays there. The plate was scratched and stained, not the same white china every other passenger received. Different plate, different food, same price, same cabin. Byron looked at the mold. He picked up the bread roll and held it close. The green-black patches were visible from a foot away. He lifted the chicken with his fork. The underside was tinged green. The smell intensified. He looked up. Sandra was already 3 seats away, serving the white passenger in 3C a perfect filet mignon with a smile that could sell toothpaste. Byron pressed the call button. The light blinked above his seat. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Sandra walked past his row twice without stopping. Jill finally approached. Byron tilted the tray toward her. "This food is moldy. The bread, the chicken. Look." Jill looked. Her face went white. Not metaphor, actual color draining from her cheeks. She could see the mold. She could smell the chicken. Her eyes darted to Sandra at the front of the cabin, laughing with a white passenger over a glass of champagne. I'm sorry, sir. Let me see if we have..." Sandra appeared behind Jill. She looked at the tray. She looked at Byron. Her expression carried all the concern of someone examining a parking meter. "That looks fine to me. Sometimes meals vary. Not every plate is going to be 5-star. She paused, smiled. "Maybe you'd prefer something from economy? I think they have sandwiches."
Byron, I want a replacement meal, the same meal every other passenger in this cabin received. Sandra didn't get him a replacement. She did something worse. She sat down. In the empty seat next to Byron, crossed her legs, looked him directly in the eye, and spoke, quietly, but in the closed space of a first-class cabin, every word carried to every row. "Let me explain something to you. I've served first class for 18 years. 18. I know who belongs in these seats and who doesn't. And you? You don't belong here. You smell like economy. You dress like economy. And that meal? That meal is exactly what someone like you deserves. So eat it. Or go hungry. I really don't care which." She stood up, smoothed her uniform, walked to the galley cart, and picked up the last filet mignon. The final plate, steaming, perfectly seared, garnished with rosemary. She carried it past Byron, slowly, close enough that the heat from the plate brushed his arm. She set it down in front of Owen Pratt across the aisle with a wide, warm smile. "Here you go, Mr. Pratt. Last one. Saved it just for you." Owen Pratt looked at the plate. He looked at Byron, at the moldy bread, the gray chicken, the tray that smelled like decay. 60 centimeters separated filet mignon from garbage, first class from contempt, human from invisible. Owen picked up his knife and fork, cut into the steak. Didn't say a word. Didn't look at Byron again. Looked at his plate. Byron sat still. The mold was in front of him. The smell was in his nose. Sandra's words were in his ears. And across the aisle, a man who saw everything was eating steak and pretending the world was fine. Byron picked up his phone. Before anything else happened, before he stood up, before he pressed another button, before he spoke another word, he took 3 photographs. Close-up of the mold on the bread, the green-black patches sharp and clear. Close-up of the chicken, gray, green-tinged underneath, the kind of image that makes your stomach turn. Full tray shot, his plate of rot in the foreground, Owen Pratt's filet mignon visible in the background. Same cabin, same light, same price. Different world. Time-stamped, geotagged. 36,000 feet over the American South. Behind the curtain, in seat 3A, Loretta Sims gripped her armrest with both hands. She had seen it all. Every skip, every spill, every plate, every smile that was given, and every smile that was withheld. She had watched Sandra sit down next to that man and tell him he didn't belong. She had watched the filet mignon walk past his face like a victory parade. Loretta was a teacher. She'd spent 38 years in classrooms full of children who were told, by the world, by the system, by people who looked like Sandra, that they didn't belong. She knew bullies. She knew how they operated. The smile, the plausible deniability, the cruelty dressed up as customer service. She wasn't going to record. She didn't think in hashtags and viral moments. She thought in right and wrong. And what she just saw was wrong. She made a decision. She'd wait. But not much longer. Byron pressed the call button one more time. Sandra came, slowly, arms crossed, the body language of a woman being inconvenienced by someone she considered beneath the effort. "I'd like to file an in-flight complaint. The meal you served me is spoiled. Visible mold, rotten chicken. Every other passenger in this cabin received a fresh, hot meal. I'm requesting to speak with the captain." Sandra tilted her head. The patronizing tilt, chin down, eyes half-lidded,
The expression of a woman explaining something simple to someone she considers simple. "Sir, we serve the same food to all first-class passengers. Sometimes there are variations in quality. It happens."
"I can bring you a snack box from economy if you'd like." She paused.
"As for the captain, he's flying the plane. He's not available for meal complaints." "This isn't a meal complaint. This is a discrimination complaint." Sandra's smile tightened. Not gone. Tightened. Pulled thin like a wire about to snap. "That is a very serious word. I would be very careful throwing it around. I've served first class for 18 years, and I treat every passenger exactly the same." She walked away.
The conversation was over, in her mind. Byron typed on his phone. 11:28 a.m. Formal complaint made. Dismissed. Request to speak with captain denied. Senior FA claimed uniform treatment, contradicted by observable meal disparity and behavioral pattern. 30 minutes passed. Byron stood to use the first-class restroom, the one at the front of the cabin, 10 feet from his seat. Sandra materialized in the aisle. She didn't just appear. She positioned herself, feet planted, shoulders. Byron reached back to his seat pocket, pulled the boarding pass, and showed her. Sandra studied it, held it up, tilted it, took her time. The same slow, theatrical examination, the universal choreography of a person with a little power exercising every microgram of it. "Fine, go ahead." She stepped aside, barely, 1 inch more than her body required. Byron turned sideways to pass. His shoulder nearly brushed her uniform. She didn't move an extra centimeter. He was in the restroom for 3 minutes. When he returned, his tray table was empty. The moldy bread, the gray chicken, the stained plate, the scratched tray, all gone. Cleared. The table had been wiped down, spotless, like nothing had ever been there. Sandra stood at the galley counter, wiping a cloth across the metal surface. She didn't look at him. She didn't need to. The message was clear. The evidence is gone. Your word against mine. And who do you think they'll believe? But Sandra had made a mistake. The kind of mistake people make when they believe they're smarter than everyone around them. Byron had photographed everything before he stood up. 3 images, time-stamped, geotagged at 36,000 feet, stored in his phone's cloud backup. The mold, the chicken, the filet mignon 60 centimeters away. The evidence wasn't on the tray. It was in the cloud, and no amount of wiping could reach it. Sandra had made a second mistake. A bigger one. While Byron was in the restroom, she'd walked to the galley terminal, the in-flight reporting system, and typed an internal report. She logged it under Passenger Incident, Seat 2A. The report read, "Passenger refused meal service, exhibited hostile and aggressive behavior toward cabin crew, appeared intoxicated. Monitoring for further disruption. S. Keene, Senior FA." Every word was a lie. Byron had not refused his meal. It was inedible. He had not been hostile. He'd spoken in a measured, controlled voice throughout. He had not been aggressive. He'd pressed a call button. And he was not intoxicated. He'd ordered ginger ale, 1 glass, which Sandra had spilled on him. She was building a paper trail, a preemptive defense. If Byron complained after landing, the airline's internal system would show that he was the problem, hostile, drunk, disruptive. The system would back Sandra because Sandra had written the system's story first. What Sandra didn't know: the in-flight reporting system logged every access, every keystroke, every edit. Who typed what, from which terminal, and when. Sandra's false report was logged at 11:35 a.m. Byron's restroom visit began at 11:34 a.m., 1 minute apart. The system had recorded the exact moment Sandra chose to fabricate, and it would testify against her with the precision of a machine that doesn't lie. And above the galley counter, mounted in the ceiling, small, black, blinking red, the cabin's security camera recorded Sandra typing the report. It recorded her clearing Byron's tray. It recorded everything. Audio and video. She never looked up. Not once. The curtain between First Class and Economy Plus shifted. Loretta Sims stood up from seat 3A. She was not supposed to be in First Class. She did not have a first-class ticket. She did not have authorization to pass through the curtain. She did not care. She stepped through the gap and walked into the first-class cabin, carrying her own meal tray. An Economy Plus upgrade, a small filet mignon she'd paid $28 for. Her treat to herself. She walked directly to Byron's row. She set her tray, her own food, her own $28 on his tray table, in front of him. Then she turned to Sandra. Her voice was not loud. It didn't need to be. It was the voice of a woman who had spent 38 years commanding rooms full of teenagers. The voice that makes you sit up straight and put your phone away without being told twice. He's eating mine. Sandra's head snapped around. Ma'am, you need to return to... I'm not finished. Loretta didn't raise her volume. She raised her precision. Now you explain to me, right here, in front of every person in this cabin, why 11 white passengers got filet mignon and 1 black passenger got food with mold growing on it. The first-class cabin went silent. The engine hum filled the space. The recycled air pushed through the vents. Every head turned. Sandra recovered, or tried to. Ma'am, I don't know what you think you saw, but meal quality varies, and I am a retired public school teacher from Atlanta, Georgia. I have spent 38 years teaching children the difference between right and wrong. I have been sitting behind that curtain for 2 hours watching you. Loretta's voice was steady as a heartbeat. I watched you skip this man during boarding. I watched you spill his drink and walk away. I watched you serve 11 passengers a hot meal and serve him garbage. I watched you sit down next to him and tell him he doesn't belong. I watched you carry the last steak past his face and hand it to the white man across the aisle like a trophy. And I watched you throw away his plate the second he went to the bathroom. She took a breath, not for air, for aim. What you are doing is deliberate. It is disgusting. And I will not sit behind that curtain for 1 more second while a man is treated like an animal on an airplane. She turned to the cabin. Did anyone else see this? The drink, the food, the different plates? 5 seconds of silence, the kind that presses on your chest. Then Owen Pratt cleared his throat. The man with the last filet mignon. The man who'd been cutting steak 60 centimeters from mold. I saw it. His voice cracked slightly. All of it. She's right. 2 other passengers nodded. One said quietly, The food was different. I noticed too. Sandra's face went red. Not embarrassment. Fury. The fury of a woman who has operated unchallenged for 18 years and has just been challenged by a retired teacher from economy. She walked to the galley intercom, picked up the phone, called the cockpit. Captain, this is Sandra. I have a disruptive passenger situation in first class. A woman from economy has entered the cabin without authorization and is inciting other passengers. The male passenger in 2A has been hostile, threatening, and appears intoxicated since boarding. I'm recommending we consider diversion for safety. She was requesting a diversion, an emergency landing. Cost? $80,000. Based entirely on lies. The same lies she'd already typed into the in-flight report. She was trying to divert a commercial aircraft carrying 180 people to cover up moldy bread. Captain Douglas Vance, former military, 22 years, responded in 4 seconds. Sandra, hold your position. Do not escalate. Do not touch the PA. I'm sending Cooper to assess. First Officer Cooper unbuckled, walked through the cockpit door, into the first-class cabin. She saw Byron, calm, phone in hand, photos visible. Loretta, standing near the galley, arms crossed, chin up. Owen Pratt, finally looking at something other than his plate. Sandra, red-faced, intercom phone still in her hand. Cooper talked to Byron, to Loretta, to Owen. She looked at Byron's photos, time-stamped, geotagged, undeniable. She checked the galley terminal, saw Sandra's internal report, checked the access log. 11:35 a.m. She walked back to the cockpit, closed the door. Captain, there's no disruptive passenger. There's a discrimination situation. The senior FA prepared and served spoiled food to the only black passenger in first class. She disposed of the evidence. She created a false internal report at 11:35, 1 minute after he left his seat. And she just requested an $80,000 diversion to cover it up.
Vance's jaw tightened. His hand settled on the armrest. 22 years. He'd never heard anything like this. Get me Sandra. The cockpit door opened. Passengers don't see the captain mid-flight. When they do, something has gone very wrong. Or something is about to be made very right. Captain Douglas Vance stepped into the first-class cabin. Full uniform, 4 stripes on each shoulder. Silver hair cropped short. The posture of a man who had landed planes in crosswinds, thunderstorms, and combat zones, and never once lost his composure in any of them. The cabin went electric. Conversations that had been murmuring since Loretta's speech stopped completely. A woman in 3C set down her wine glass. Owen Pratt straightened in his seat. Even the engine hum seemed to quiet, as if the aircraft itself was paying attention. Vance walked directly to seat 2A. He didn't look at Sandra. Not yet. Sir, I'm Captain Vance. I apologize for the disruption to your flight. My first officer has briefed me on the situation. May I see the photographs you took? Byron handed over his phone. Vance swiped through the images slowly. The moldy bread. Green-black patches, sharp and clear under the cabin light. The gray chicken, tinged green on the underside. The full tray shot. Byron's plate of decay in the foreground, Owen Pratt's filet mignon in the background. Same cabin, same light. Same flight. Different world. Time-stamped, geotagged. 36,000 feet over Mississippi. Vance held the phone for a long time. His thumb didn't move. His face didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around the phone case. He handed it back. Then he walked to the galley terminal. He opened the in-flight reporting system. He read Sandra's entry. Hostile, aggressive, appeared intoxicated. He checked the access log. Report created, 11:35 a.m. Terminal, Galley Station 1. Author, S. Keene. Byron's restroom visit logged by cabin sensors. 11:34 a.m. 1 minute apart. She wrote it the moment he left his seat. Vance stared at the screen. Then he said, to no one, to everyone. She wrote this while he was in the restroom. He closed the terminal, walked back to Byron. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Byron Mitchell. Something shifted behind Vance's eyes. Not surprise. Recognition. The instant, bone-deep recognition of a military man who knew the defense industry the way a surgeon knows the body. Byron Mitchell. Mitchell Aerospace Industries. Yes. Vance was quiet for 2 seconds. 2 seconds that rearranged the entire geometry of the cabin. Your company built the navigation system on this aircraft. And the cockpit interface. And the emergency lighting. Vance looked at the ceiling, at the emergency lights lining the aisle. Lights that Byron's engineers designed.
Lights that would guide every person on this plane to safety if something went wrong, including Sandra. He looked at Sandra, standing at the galley, arms crossed, jaw tight, the posture of a woman who still believed she was in control. Then he looked back at Byron, then at Loretta, still standing near the galley with her arms crossed and her chin level, then at Owen Pratt, who had finally stopped pretending the window was more interesting than injustice.
Mr. Mitchell, what happened on this flight is not representative of this airline, and it will be addressed before we land.
He walked to the galley. Sandra was leaning against the counter. Her arms were crossed, but her fingers were gripping her own elbows. A tell. She was holding herself together. Sandra? Vance's voice was level, the kind of level that's more frightening than shouting.
I've reviewed photographs of the meal you served to seat 2A.
I've spoken to 3 witnesses in the cabin. I've reviewed your internal report and the system log that proves you created it at 11:35 a.m., 1 minute after Mr. Mitchell left his seat. I've also reviewed your intercom call requesting a diversion based on a disruptive passenger situation that does not exist. Sandra. Captain, I was following. You prepared spoiled food before this flight departed. You served it to the only black passenger in first class. You disposed of the evidence while he was in the restroom. You fabricated an internal report calling him hostile and intoxicated. He drank ginger ale. You attempted an $80,000 diversion to cover your own misconduct. He paused. And you did this to a man whose company built the navigation system I used to chart our heading 20 minutes ago. Sandra's face drained. The color left in stages. Forehead, cheeks, lips, like watching paint peel off a wall. I didn't know who he... You didn't need to know. He's a passenger. He purchased a first-class ticket. And you served him mold. Vance straightened. Sandra Keene, effective immediately, you are relieved of all duties on this flight. You will not perform further service. You will not interact with any passenger. You will take a seat in the rear of this aircraft for the remainder of the flight. Upon landing in Los Angeles, you will be met by company representatives. I am recommending your immediate termination. Sandra, you can't do this in the air. I have a union. 18 years. I'm not terminating you. I'm relieving you for passenger safety. The termination comes on the ground, and 18 years won't protect you when there are photographs, system logs, witness statements, and a cockpit recording of you requesting a fraudulent diversion. 3 seconds of silence. Sand reached behind her neck, untied her service apron, folded it once, set it on the galley counter, next to the cloth she'd used to wipe away the evidence. She walked to the rear of the aircraft, down the aisle, past every first-class passenger who watched her go, past Owen Pratt, who couldn't meet her eyes, past Loretta's empty seat in 3A, past the curtain, into economy, into the last row. She sat down. She didn't look at anyone. The first-class cabin was silent. The hum of the engines filled the space. Vance turned to the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. For the remainder of this flight, First Officer Cooper and I will ensure your service is handled properly. He looked at Byron. Mr. Mitchell, on behalf of this crew, I am deeply sorry. Loretta nodded once, walked back through the curtain to 3A, sat down, adjusted her reading glasses, and for the first time in 2 hours, she exhaled. Flight 320 touched down at LAX at 2:15 p.m. Pacific. The wheels hit the tarmac with a double thud. The engines reversed. The cabin shuddered and settled. Before the seatbelt sign turned off, before a single passenger unbuckled, the cabin door opened and 2 people stepped onto the jet bridge. Denise Caldwell, Vice President of Customer Experience, Crestline Airways. Black woman, late 40s, dark suit, No smile. She'd flown from Dallas on a corporate shuttle the moment Captain Vance's in-flight report was transmitted at 38,000 feet. Beside her, a Crestline HR representative carrying a leather folder and a tablet. Sandra was escorted off first, alone, before any passenger deplaned. She walked up the jet bridge with a corporate security officer on each side. She passed Denise without looking up. Her apron was gone. Her wings pin was still on her chest, but not for long. Denise boarded the aircraft. She walked through first class, past the empty galley, past the trays that had been cleared, past the seat where Sandra had sat down and told a man he didn't belong, and stopped at row 2. Mr. Mitchell, I'm Denise Caldwell, Vice President of Customer Experience for Crestline Airways. I've reviewed Captain Vance's in-flight report, your photographs, and the system logs, including the internal report filed by Ms. Keene at 11:35 a.m. She paused, let the specificity land. She'd done her homework at 40,000 feet. On behalf of this airline, what happened to you today was unacceptable. It was not a service failure. It was a deliberate act, and it will be treated as one. Byron looked at her. I appreciate that, but my concern isn't just what happened to me. It's what happens to every passenger who doesn't have photographs, timestamps, and a CEO title. The ones who eat the sandwich, or go hungry, and nobody ever finds out. Denise nodded slowly. I understand, and I want you to know, this investigation will not be limited to today's flight. In a private room at the LAX Crestline Operations Office, Sandra Keene was formally terminated. The HR representative read the grounds from the leather folder, each one a sentence, each sentence a door closing. Premeditated food safety violation. Retrieving known expired food from the disposal bin and deliberately serving it to a passenger. Racial discrimination in cabin service. Evidence tampering. Disposing of the contaminated meal during the passenger's restroom visit. Fabrication of a false internal report, logging the passenger as hostile, aggressive, and intoxicated, contradicted by photographs, witness statements, and the fact that he ordered ginger ale. Filing a false disruptive passenger report with the cockpit. Requesting a fraudulent diversion, estimated cost $80,000 to avoid accountability. 18 years of service, 22 passenger complaints, 16 involving passengers of color. All filed, all resolved. 0 disciplinary action. The system had protected Sandra for nearly 2 decades. Today, the system ran out of walls. Sandra's response, the same response she'd given at every turning point that day, the same 5 words she seemed to believe would fix everything. I didn't know who he was. Denise's response was the last thing Sandra heard as an employee of Crestline Airways. That is exactly the problem, and it's the last thing you'll say wearing that uniform. Badge collected, wings pin removed, uniform to be returned by courier. Sandra walked out of LAX through the employee exit, carrying a clear plastic bag of personal items. No lanyard, no wings, no galley, no curtain to hide behind. Jill Harmon was suspended pending investigation. She hadn't initiated the cruelty, but she'd seen the mold, smelled the chicken, watched the drink spill, heard Sandra tell a man he didn't belong, and she chose silence every single time. As passengers deplaned, Loretta Sims stopped at row 2. She extended her hand. Her grip was firm, the grip of a woman who had shaken 10,000 parents' hands across 38 years of parent-teacher conferences. Loretta Sims, I was behind the curtain. I'll testify, in writing, under oath, wherever you need me. Byron shook her hand. Mrs. Sims, what you did, Stepping through that curtain, putting your own meal on my table. That took more courage than most people find in a lifetime. Took 38 years of teaching children right from wrong. Some lessons just take a while to deliver. Owen Pratt approached next. His hand was unsteady. His tie was loosened. He looked like a man who had spent the last hour of the flight staring at something inside himself that he didn't like. I'm Owen Pratt, 1C. I saw everything, and He stopped, started again. She brought me that last steak, right in front of you, and I cut into it, while you sat there looking at mold. I didn't say a word until a 62-year-old woman said it first. Byron looked at him, steady, unblinking. You didn't just eat steak while I ate mold, Mr. Pratt. You watched a woman tell me I don't belong, and you picked up your fork. Owen had no answer. There wasn't one. But you spoke eventually, so write it down, every detail, and send it to my attorney. Owen took Byron's card, nodded, walked up the jet bridge slowly, carrying something invisible and very, very heavy. The evidence didn't trickle out. It detonated. Byron's legal team filed the civil lawsuit within 72 hours. Defendants, Crestline Airways, and Sandra Keene personally. 8 pages of allegations. Premeditated racial discrimination, deliberate food safety violation, evidence tampering, fabrication of false reports, fraudulent diversion request, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The FAA opened a parallel investigation. Filing a false diversion request on a commercial aircraft is a federal offense, the kind that ends with prosecutors, not apologies. Crestline launched its internal investigation. They pulled Sandra's 18-year service record. 22 complaints. 16 involved passengers of color. All filed, all resolved. 0 discipline. Not a warning, not a conversation. She'd been protected by seniority and a system that treated complaints as paperwork instead of patterns. Then the galley inventory logs. 12 first-class meals loaded, all filet mignon, all accounted for. 11 served, 1 to Owen Pratt. The spoiled meal served to Byron wasn't on the manifest. It came from the expired disposal bin. Then the final piece, the one that turned a termination into a criminal referral. Pre-boarding galley security camera. Timestamp, 8:42 a.m. 45 minutes before boarding. Sandra entering the galley alone, opening the expired stock bin, red dispose tag, pulling out a tray with moldy bread and expired chicken, plating it on scratched china, sliding it into the cart behind 11 filet mignon plates, marking the position with a sticky note, 2A, premeditation, high definition, on camera. Byron's attorney released his 3 photographs through a press statement. The mold, the chicken, the full tray shot with Owen's filet mignon in the background. Every major outlet picked them up within 24 hours. The contrast was visceral. 11 passengers eating 5-star, 1 eating rot. Same cabin, same price, different skin. It trended for a week. Not because a CEO got served mold, because everyone understood this happens to passengers who aren't CEOs. Passengers without photos, without timestamps, without a captain willing to intervene. They eat the sandwich, or go hungry, and no one ever knows. Trial. 6 weeks later. Judge Elaine Rowan presiding. Courtroom packed. Journalists, aviation observers, civil rights advocates, and a row of Air Force veterans who drove from 3 states to sit behind Byron. The prosecution opened with Byron's photographs on a 12-foot courtroom screen. Mold in high resolution. Gray chicken. Filet mignon in the background. A juror covered her mouth. Then the galley footage. 8:42 a.m. Sandra opening the disposal bin. Plating expired food. Marking 2A. The courtroom watched a woman engineer cruelty 45 minutes before her victim arrived at the airport. Then the system log. Sandra's false report at 11:35 a.m. Byron's restroom visit, 11:34 a.m. Fabrication timed to the second. Then the cockpit recording. Sandra's voice requesting diversion. Hostile, threatening, intoxicated. Every word a lie. Recorded on a system designed to survive plane crashes. Captain Vance testified, 22 years. She served spoiled food with premeditation, destroyed evidence, fabricated reports, and attempted to divert a commercial aircraft. $80,000, 180 passengers at risk, to avoid accountability for moldy bread. Loretta testified. Same reading glasses, same cardigan. I watched a woman serve poison with a smile and call it service. When I couldn't watch anymore, I gave that man my own food. Because someone on that airplane had to act like a human being. Owen Pratt's statement was read into the record. Final paragraph. She placed the last filet mignon 60 centimeters from his mold, deliberately, as a performance. I ate it. I said nothing for over an hour. A retired teacher from economy stood up before I opened my mouth. That silence is something I will carry for the rest of my life. Jill Harmon testified. Galley culture, Sandra's hierarchy, unwritten rules. I saw the mold. I smelled the chicken. I watched the drink spill. I chose my job over doing the right thing. Sandra's defense, honest mistake and personality differences. Judge Rowan needed 2 minutes to dismantle 18 years of excuses. This was not a mistake. Mistakes are random. This was engineered. At 8:42 a.m., the defendant retrieved expired food and plated it for the only black passenger in first class. She served 11 passengers filet mignon and 1 passenger mold. She sat beside him and told him he did not belong. She disposed of evidence, fabricated reports, requested a diversion. Every action deliberate. Every choice racial. This court finds not an error in service, but a campaign of premeditated cruelty, planned on the ground and executed at 36,000 feet. Sandra Keene, liable on all counts, full damages, permanently barred from commercial aviation, referred to federal prosecutors for the false diversion request. Jill Harmon, 6-month suspension, anti-discrimination training, probation. Crestline Airways, settled. Overhauled crew training, real-time complaint tracking. Complaints can no longer be resolved without investigation. Independent cabin ombudsman established. Public apology issued. FAA issued new federal guidance citing this case. Meal disparities treated as discrimination indicators. Expired food disposal requires witnessed sign-off with photo verification. Sandra's 8:42 a.m. footage became standard training material at every major U.S. airline. Byron donated his entire settlement to establish the Loretta Sims Foundation for Passenger Rights, named after the woman who stepped through a curtain with a $28 steak and said what a cabin full of $4,000 seats couldn't. Loretta cried when she heard, the good kind. 6 months later, Byron Mitchell sat in Seat 2A, Crestline Airways, first class, Atlanta to Los Angeles, same route, same aircraft type, MA-9 wide body, the one his company built. Black t-shirt, jeans, white sneakers, same outfit, no briefcase, no suit. Just a man with a book and a window seat. A flight attendant approached. Young, new uniform, part of Crestline's reformed crew program. Her smile was real, not performed, not calculated. Real. Good morning, sir. Welcome aboard. Can I get you a pre-departure beverage? We have champagne, sparkling water, or fresh juice. Byron smiled. Ginger ale, please. She brought it, set it down on the tray table. Steady hand. Not a drop spilled. Your meal today is filet mignon with roasted vegetables and a warm bread roll. I'll bring it out once we reach cruising altitude. Is there anything else I can get you? No, thank you. That's perfect. She walked away. Byron opened his book, a new copy of the same paperback Sandra's ginger ale had destroyed 6 months ago. He'd ordered it the day after the trial ended. Same edition, same cover. He'd been waiting to finish it. The engines hummed. The cabin settled. The plane climbed through the clouds and leveled out at 36,000 feet, the same altitude where a retired teacher once stepped through a curtain with her own meal and changed everything. Byron read. The coffee was warm. The air was clean. Nobody skipped him. Nobody spilled anything. Nobody told him he didn't belong. Everything a flight should be. Everything it always should have been. In Atlanta, the Loretta Sims Foundation for Passenger Rights had been open for 5 months. 412 complaints processed. Real complaints. Documented. Investigated. 38 had resulted in disciplinary action across 4 airlines. 11 had been escalated to the FAA. 3 flight attendants had been terminated. 2 gate agents had been retrained. 1 airline had rewritten its entire service manual. Loretta sat on the board. She attended every meeting. She read every complaint, every single one printed out in a binder with her reading glasses and a red pen. She was 62 years old and had more energy than she'd had teaching 11th grade English. A reporter asked her in an interview, "Why this? Why now? You're retired. You could be on a beach." Loretta adjusted her glasses. I spent 38 years telling kids to speak up when they see something wrong. Turns out I needed to take my own advice. Better late than never. The Foundation's motto was printed on every letterhead, every email signature, every complaint form. Someone is always watching. Be the one who speaks. Loretta had it framed above her desk at home, right next to her teaching certificate and a photograph of her granddaughter's college graduation. The $28 filet mignon she gave Byron that day, her treat to herself, her Economy Plus upgrade, became the most expensive meal in aviation history. Not because of what it cost, because of what it started. So here's my question. If you were on that plane, filet mignon on your table, mold on the table across the aisle, a woman telling the man next to you he doesn't belong, would you be a Loretta? The one who stands up, steps through the curtain, and gives away her own plate? Or would you be an Owen, the one who eats the steak, looks out the window, and waits for someone braver to go first? Be honest. Comments, right now. And if this story got to you, if it made you look at your own silence, or remember a time you saw something wrong and chose your fork over your voice, share it. Send it to someone. Hit like, subscribe. Because these stories aren't stopping. Not until the curtain comes down for good. Crestline Airways is fictional. Byron Mitchell is fictional. But that first-class cabin is real. People get served mold, literal and metaphorical, every single day while the person next to them eats well and stares out the window. Byron had the photos. He had the title. He had the captain. But what actually changed that cabin was a retired teacher who stepped through a curtain with a $28 plate and said, "This is wrong," out loud. You don't need a CEO title. You don't need a camera. You don't need a law degree. You just need to be the one person who refuses to stay quiet. Be a Loretta. I'll see you in the next one. Stay loud, stay honest, and never eat the mold.